Hello everyone, and this is DaseinWasHere today, and today we'll be talking about tips, tricks, and tactics of backcapping. This video is going to be in two different parts. The first part of the video, we're going to be talking about how to actually backcap. The next part of the video, we're then going to be focusing on how to defend against backcapping, being as this is very important for you to be able to grasp, being as if you cannot defend against this tactic, you're probably going to lose the game. Backcapping is a very broad terminology. This is when you're not actually going to be at the fight helping your team out there, but you're going to be going toward key objectives. In Fractured Space, when we talk about backcapping, we're not talking about mines usually. We are talking about the key objectives like forward stations, which open up the lane for your team to go into the enemy base, or even backcapping the enemy base itself while the enemy team is distracted. So backcapping really does encompass quite a bit under that terminology. So when you decide to backcap, you're going to have to think about several things. First of all, can my team handle the enemy long enough for me to be actually able to do any good? Being as if your team gets wiped faster than you can actually open objectives, then the enemy can quickly react to you and actually make it so you're not actually doing any good. Thus, it's a lose-lose situation for your team right there, as well as the enemy now has the ability to react and start going after your key objectives with impunity, being as your team has been wiped. Along with this same train of thought, it is sometimes actually best for your team to actually be backcapping as a whole, going for objectives and avoiding fights, being as if you are a really light mobile team and the enemy team is a very heavy team that you really can't win a direct fight with, then you're going to want to keep on going for objectives and everything, trying to isolate them, trying to keep them moving. That way you'll catch up on levels, and then you'll be able to also catch up on the initiative, being as from there you can start controlling and dictating the battlefield, being as you're deciding what's going on when instead of the enemy. The next thing you're really going to have to think about is enemy reaction times. Will I be able to get there fast enough to actually do any good? Or are the enemies going to be able to react to me faster than I can actually start the process of backcapping, being as just going and touching the enemy forward station or heading toward that is often enough to actually get a recall. In some cases, if you know you're not going to be able to win the fight against what is actually recalling, and if you're communicating with your team to find out what is recalling, you might be able to just actually succeed in the backcap attempt by just that attempt of backcapping and then leaving before the enemy can get there, being as now the enemy has pulled out a position, giving your team time to actually recover and go and start gaining ground. So sometimes just the attempt or trying to attempt the backcap is better than actually trying to fully go for the cap, being as if the entire enemy reacts to you and kills you, then you will be dead for a while and the enemy will have the advantage on the battlefield for a period of time. And the last thing you'll need to think about is timing. You're going to want to pick the best time for your team to be able to capitalize on what you're doing, being as you'll want to either pick times to open up the forward station when your entire team can actually go through and you can actually do a good chunk, or you'll want to wait until they're actually occupied in fights. Another good strategy is to wait until near gamma time, start the backcap attempt, and try to draw some people away from gamma, because if they're now drawn away, your team has better odds in the gamma fight. Keeping in mind, though, if you die too quick, your team will be at a disadvantage, being as then the people that went to deal with you will be back and at Gamma, and your team will be down at least one person. There are several strategies that will actually really enhance the damage that you'll do while backcapping. The first thing you'll want to do is be facing the direction you want to be facing. If you're going to go for the cap on their base, you're going to want to have your ship oriented toward their base. That way you don't waste precious time turning around and giving the enemy more time to react. Now, if you're going to want to open up the other forward station in the other lane, you're going to be wanting to be facing that forward station. And when you do that, you don't want to keep on going forward, and you're going to either want to go up or down. That way, if the enemy jumps in right on top of your jump point, it's going to take them a little bit longer to find you, being as most people tend to be looking on a flat plane instead of up or down. Also, you'll want to take advantage of asteroids that are around there. That way you can be behind cover and jump in relative safety. The next tip that you're going to want to remember is using the enemy structures as cover. This allows it not to be a one-way mission, and also allows you to keep the backcap process going. Being as if you go into the enemy base, start getting a cap percentage on the base, but you've shot out the turrets that were shooting at you, so you can now have a little hidey hole where you're using the base as cover, which allows you then to jump away and go to either of the two forward stations, whether you're going to re-unlock a station or you're going to go back to a station that you've previously opened so you can heal up if you're lower health. If you're going for an enemy forward station to cap it, you're going to want to be hugging that base shield and facing the direction of your particular side of the lane. Being as, let's say the enemy comes in, then all you have to do is duck under the shield, go back up, and then that shield is actually protecting you from the enemy, which then allows you to either jump into the enemy base, being as you've opened up the base, or if you weren't able to open it up, you can then just jump into a safe sector. It is usually advisable when you're doing this to actually use the regular jump. Yes, it's a longer cooldown if you have to jump home to your base, but it's also the safest route, being as it has the lowest spool up time, which really leaves you vulnerable for a shorter period of time than using jump home. And the last bit of advice for while you're backcapping is to make sure that your team takes out those beacons as early as they can, being as those beacons really do illuminate the area around the forward stations and gives the enemy advance notice for enemies going for those forward stations. This means that if you take those out, your job for backcapping or opening up enemy forward bases is going to be much easier once those things are gone. I hope you've enjoyed this video on tips, tricks, and tactics on how to backcap. We do have part 2, which actually talks about how to stop backcapping. So after you watch this, please move on to that and see how to actually stop backcapping. As always, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, take care.